Hi, and welcome to Something to Talk About. I'm LindaMcNamee, and for the next hour, as you saw from the introduction, we're going to be talking about allergy and asthma awareness, or asthma and allergy awareness. But anyway, we're going to talk about both, so I guess order really doesn't matter. But as always, I have a few housekeeping rules that I want to get out of the way. If you would like to call us, we are live this evening. You can call and talk to one of our guests, whom you will meet momentarily, by giving us a call at 781-270-9199. If you have a suggestion for a future topic or a question that you think of later on, you can always email me at talk@bcattv.org. We have a wonderful live crew for this evening. Chris Flaherty, who is a staff member here, making sure that us volunteers don't cause too much trouble. And we have Liz Gillespie, who's one of the long-standing volunteers, and you might notice her from the sports report that you see on B News every week. And they have given up their Wednesday evenings to come hang out at BCAT and make sure that everything runs smoothly. And last but definitely not least, I would like to thank my husband Paul for staying home for Daddy Date Night. Hopefully all the homework's done and everyone is enjoying a nice evening at home. Now, we have two wonderful guests for this evening. We have Kristie DeLoreto and Michael. Oh no, Michael, I know you told me how to pronounce it. DiGirolamo? You'll fix it for me. I'm sorry, I knew I'd screwed up. I'm sorry. And Kristie is the president and founder of AAAI, which is the Asthma and Allergy Awareness Initiative. Thank you for using initials. And Michael is the vice chairman of the board of directors for the organization. So welcome. Thank you very much for joining me. Kristie, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, how you came to the Eastern Mass, General Burlington area? And yeah, let's start with that. And then we'll get into how you developed the idea of AAAI.
Sure. Yeah. And thank you for having us on the show tonight. It's our pleasure to join. And it's timely since it's Allergy Awareness Week. So we plan that well. And we could talk a little bit about, what we do is raising awareness. So again, I'm Kristie DeLoreto, and I actually grew up in Everett. Right
Really
down the
close to
road
home.
from
Yeah,
where we
exactly.
are now. Yeah, real close. Grew up there, got married, and purchased a house in Everett. And then we had our first son, who will be 18 tomorrow. And
Happy birthday day.
God. And then we moved up to Peabody. My brother had moved prior to us, and I wanted to really be close to him and kind of raise our kids together and have them be close. So we moved up here, and we had another son, Michael, and he is now 15. And then we actually I have another son who is 11. So we have three boys. And that's really, kind of stayed here. So, From Everett to Peabody, which there's a lot of that move, there's a lot of Everett roots in Peabody. Great city to raise kids in. And I'll talk a little bit after just about the support that we've received here.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's
Michael,
a little bit about me.
What's your story?
That's pretty similar.
Okay.
Started in Everett also. Grew up in Everett, went to school in Everett. Married a girl from Everett. And we didn't go quite as far as Peabody, but we settled in Saugus, where we still are today, with a 15-year-old boy and a 9-year-old girl, soon to be 10. But again, pretty similar stories, pretty similar, starting points. And I don't know that we knew each other way back in the Everett days, but we had a handful of mutual friends, and figure that out later on, probably years later, that we had a bunch of mutual friends and some mutual interest, and that's sort of how we got connected all these years later.
Cool. Love those small world stories. They all sneak up on you once in a while.
Yeah.
Well, that's what landed us here tonight, right?
Exactly. So, what Where did you come up with the idea of the organization? What made you want to establish an organization, like an official nonprofit versus just get a bunch of people together, like your kids' friends or your friends? And tell me, what's the brainchild?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And I always say that I never saw myself becoming a founder and president of an allergy organization, right? When
Or
I
any
set out and
organization,
got
probably.
married, or any organization. So my middle son, when he was 2.5, he ate a cashew for the first time. We were at my
Uh-oh.
parents' house, and it was my brother that was like, he keeps asking for a cashew. Can I let him try it? And I'm like, we have an Italian family. Nuts are always out on the table. It was just not something we avoided, but at the time they didn't really tell you to introduce anything like that until after they were 3. He was close enough. So
Okay.
I was like, what? He's had peanuts, like rational. I had a friend that had a daughter with a food allergy, so I was familiar with it.
Okay.
But figured enough time had gone by. He
But
ate the cashew
there was no
and
history.
instantly,
Okay.
no history, nothing. He did have, wasn't diagnosed with asthma yet, but he had the markers of it. He went
Okay.
into instant anaphylaxis.
Oh
And
no.
I had no idea really what it was. We had gone to the beach that day, and I'm like, maybe he got bit by a bug. I mean, he swelled up. It was like nothing I've seen. We were in Everett, so we were close to the Whidden Hospital. Raced him up there, like he's in full anaphylaxis.
Oh,
And
bad.
avoid nuts. We had him tested, and he ended up being allergic to all tree nuts, sesame, sunflower, coconut. I mean, he had so many allergies. We had no idea.
Oh, the poor kid.
Yeah, and then about 3 or so months later, he ended up with having a severe asthma attack. Those go hand in hand. And he ended up in Beverly Hospital.
Oh, no.
His oxygen was hanging at 80. We were ambulance down to Boston Children's Hospital. He spent about a weekend on his birthday in the ICU there. And it was just, very scary. It was a very scary couple of months, right? It was just, what is going on? I have 3 kids. It's what's happening. It was a lot. Really scary. Well, I had 2 kids at the time. My little one.
But still,
wasn't born
watching
yet,
your
so.
baby go through this, you're like totally freaking out.
Yeah,
You must have
totally
been.
freaking out. My friend, she had, we were always with her, so I knew of the food allergies. She was like my mentor. She's a Linfield girl, and she was my rock through it all because she had been through a lot of it. And then with the asthma, it was just new. It was a long time getting the diagnosis, and then we got that after that asthma attack. And life just changed. After your child is diagnosed with food allergies, nothing is really safe anymore.
Oh.
Any bite of food can send them into anaphylaxis. It's a scary, scary world. The one thing that you need to survive is the one thing that could
kill you.
End your life.
Yeah.
It's and as a parent, you want to fix everything and you can't. So I was the angry mama bear for a really long time. It was, people didn't understand. And in that time, there wasn't a lot of awareness about food allergies. I mean, people always say to me, did anybody in your family have food allergies? Did you know anybody with food allergies? And in talking to Michael, I mean, he had food allergies, but nobody really talked about it.
Right.
And Michael can talk about that in a few minutes, but I didn't have any friends that had that. Nobody had it. It just wasn't, they probably did, but it wasn't diagnosed and it wasn't discussed.
Exactly.
So,
It was wasn't a socially acceptable thing back when we were growing up.
I don't know that our parents at the time just really inspected or looked into a lot of those things.
Okay.
It just wasn't the same. I don't know. So, it was just, I was just so mad all the time and upset because I was scared. And, that presented as I would try to educate people, but I'd more yell at them, like, and get mad. And I had a friend who was like, she had said, I'll never forget her saying to me, why don't you take all of that passion and anger and educate with it?
Okay.
Do something with it. You have so much information to give and you can't put it out this way. People aren't going to react.
But it's
the
more
way
fun
you want.
yelling at people.
Well, yeah, but it's like a toxic, feeling to feel like that. And I was like, you don't understand. We're not friends anymore. You don't live the life I live. You don't have a child with food allergies. And then about a week went by and I'm like, oh my God, she's so right. She is absolutely right. This isn't helping. We can do something with this. I can take this energy and put it into something. And I put it out there, and parents came, and we started by sitting in a conference room. And I went to the superintendent at the time, and I'm like, listen, there's no awareness in Peabody for food allergies. And I need there to be. I need people to understand this.
How old was your son at this time? Because you had said that you first realized that he had allergies when he was like 3.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't be in the schools yet. So
my older son was. So I was like,
okay.
we had an allergy-free school, one school in the city. And I was like, I want him to go there. And they were like, well, he doesn't go, that's because they're like, but he doesn't have allergies. I'm like, I know, but my other son does. I'm like, I know, but you can't do that way. So I was like, well, that's weird. I don't want them at the same school.
Not having my kid. Exactly. No.
Right. So, we started so they were like, okay, well, you know what, let's raise awareness. Let's start talking about it. Let's, do something in the city. And that's kind of how we did it. And they helped me put it out there. And then all of a sudden I was sitting in a conference room with 6, 7, 8 other parents and even a couple of teenagers. And it was more of a support group, and that's kind of how it evolved. That's how it started. Honestly, it was just more, we got together to try to raise awareness, but we all leaned on each other to share stories and try to help each other, and really became friends and started that way.
So how does Michael fit into the picture?
So Michael, do you want to tell his story?
Well, you heard Kristie saying back in 2009, this was not a major conversation piece amongst many people. So if you can picture what it was like in 1982, when I was Michael, I think I was the only kid I knew that had food allergies, and it wasn't even, nobody was talking about it. Restaurants weren't accommodating. You just lived your life, and nobody else around you, knew about it. And, not that it was totally difficult, but it was just something that you didn't mention or know. Like I said, nobody was accommodating about it. So fast forward 30 years later, I see her talking about it online, Facebook, and I'm like, that's interesting. I haven't heard anybody trying to solve these problems.
Seriously.
That known existed for a long time. And so I reached out and basically said, hey, this is something that is awesome. I wish, I had stuff like this when I was 8, 9, 10, 7, or however old. And I basically just made a donation and sort of said, I'm going to, try to help you guys out when I can, follow along. And then it just grew into, joining the group and, being part of a lot more things over the years. But it was basically just, seeing somebody pay attention to something that I knew what it was like dealing with. And now, 2009 to, 11, 12 years later, it's sort of mainstreamish where, restaurants are advertising that they cater to this. I mean, you almost can't look online and find a menu that doesn't have some separate menu catering something. Schools have tables that you have to sit at if you have certain issues. But it's come a long way, and it's all positive, I think. But I also think the numbers of people that are dealing with this are increasing, so it's only natural to give it some attention. So it was basically just, like I said, I saw somebody paying attention to something that nobody else had before, and it just seemed like a natural fit. And 8 or 9 years later, we're still kind of chugging along, given what the last year has been like. It's been difficult, but it's been fun. And my two and as I guess fate would have it, my daughter found out the hard way, like Kristie's son, that she had some food allergies. So after I joined the group, we found that out. And then a few years later, we found out that my son had celiac. So then it just became a more even obvious fit that we are now living that life all over again. But when I initially became part of this, it was just sort of as like a supporter, because I had dealt with this. It really hadn't hit home yet.
Right.
Wasn't modifying my lifestyle around anything. But then when it happened to my two children, almost everything that Kristie had just said was now my life, with the anger, the frustration, the wanting to fix it but can't. So, you turn that attention into just figuring out ways to, make things a little bit better, letting other people know what things are like. And, it's been an interesting 7, 8, 9 years, however long we've been doing this, but it
seems like an eternity.
Yeah, it was a kind of a random connection that I'm glad I had when the time came, because it's a it adds some layers to the everyday, so.
You should have never sent that message, Michael. You jinxed yourself.
Well, I'm also thinking it must be nice to have Michael on the board because, like you said, you have that insight of having lived it in a world that was unaware. So, you could kind of target, okay, this is a really big issue over here, or this is a problem over here. So we really need to fix that.
Yeah, Michael and I have conversations where we try to solve the world's problems, and we've definitely used our experiences over that. And I had what they said was kind of a form of asthma in high school and before, again, not diagnosed anything specific, but just, listening to Michael and even now as our kids are older, it's, well, what was it like for you in high school? And just like, tapping back on that experience and kind of what he was thinking and feeling, and things change from when they're little kids to now when they're teenagers and then move into adult. It's kind of all new, different types of worries. And that's kind of where we're at right now. He still has a younger one. My one with allergies is a teenager, and we have some on the board that's just starting out with little ones. So it's we got to keep it going. We aren't done. Our work is definitely not done by any stretch. We've made a lot of progress, but there's a lot more to go.
So you had mentioned that it kind of started just as a support group at one of the schools. Yeah. How long was it a support group, and what made you bridge into actually establishing a 501c3 nonprofit organization? You don't wake up one morning saying, hey, I'm going to file for a new organization.
Yeah. So one thing about me, I guess, is that when I do anything, I have to do it on a grand scale, right? Like we're going to, it's a little extreme. So at the time we were sitting there and we're like, God, we could, look at us all. We look at the things that we could do in order to do things, you need money, right? So it kind of turned into, all right, well, let's fundraise a little. Boston Children's Hospital was near and dear to most of our hearts. At the time, just because they have an asthma and immunology department, and we would go to events and see the doctors there and all that. So we're like, wow, all right, let's raise some money for them. Let's just do that. And we decided to one of our support group moms owned a bakery in Linfield at the time, and it was an allergy friendly bakery because obviously she had a child with food allergies. So we're like, all right, let's sell some cookies. It was Valentine's Day, right? So we're like, we'll sell some cookies. We'll raise some money. It's allergy friendly. We'll get her some exposure to our bakery. Win-win. We ended up selling so many cookies that we ended up donating almost $2,500 to Boston Children's Hospital of two cookies in a bag. And we were like, oh my God. And just people's response. Yeah, it was awesome, but it was like, how, these people, I think we sold them for, Michael, I think it was like $5 or something for a bag of cookies. So it was a lot of cookies, and people were like, this is great, and while we were doing that, we were raising awareness. We were putting facts out there. We kind of carried that, forward. After that, it helped us gain momentum. It was Valentine's Day. We were heading into Allergy Awareness Month. We were like, all right, let's keep going. Let's do other things. Let's work with the schools, so
you had that success and you just wanted to kind of feed on that success.
Yeah, we got to keep going now, right? Where people are noticing. And I had gone to a school committee meeting. I requested to be able to speak at it and kind of tell them what we were doing as parents. And they were like, whatever you want to do, we fully support you. And that never happens, Linda. I've met a lot of advocates across the country, in a lot of different towns, and Peabody is
Wow.
by far the most supportive when it comes to raising awareness and
Excellent.
promoting. The support has been unbelievable. And they were like, whatever you want to do, we will support it. You know, if you want to do things in the schools, so we're like, all right, it's Allergy Awareness Month. We want to, you know, put things out in the schools. Like, and every year, you know, from there for many years, we did a lot of things in the school. We would give pencils out, and we would have like wear a sock, you know, crazy socks, and just whatever it was that we could just get the kids to be talking about it. You know, I attended Girl Scout meetings where I, you know, read stories to the Girl Scouts, and we kind of talked about how they could help. The Girl Scouts helped us with putting ribbons together, which we gave out one year, little teal ribbons, and just try and get all that out. So, you know, it was chugging along, and more people were like, I want to be involved. I want to do more with that.
Wow.
And then we were like, okay, so let's have a benefit. I'm like, let's raise even more money, right? So let's have
bake more cookies.
I mean, Linda, like it just spirals, and everyone's like, okay, let's do it. So in order to get donations, you need to be a nonprofit. You can get smaller donations, but in order to get larger donations, we thought, well, we can't apply for the cruise, you know, donation from Norwegian if we don't have a 501c3. Is it the time to do that? Why not? You know, why not? Let's make it official. Michael had a friend that was able to help us out with that, and we did it pretty short time. Michael, I think it was like under a month that we turned it around and we were able to get that status through, right?
It was quick. It's not as complicated as, you know, as it sounds, but it was fairly quick.
I wouldn't know where to begin. I mean,
we didn't really either. I said, you know, people have asked me, how did you do this? You know, you just asked the question. It was kind of like, I feel like we felt our way through it, you know, the whole time. We just kind of go out there and get help, and people support us. And, you know, ever since, and we officially became a nonprofit in 2015.
In 15. Okay. So you've been like official for 6 years now. That's great.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, before we go into more of the organization itself, a couple of times you've mentioned asthma and allergies. What kind of connection is there between the two? Is there a connection?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a lot of diagnosis, if there's a child with food allergies, they're more than likely have some, they say that it comes in threes: allergies, asthma, and eczema, skin with the skin. So most kids, not all, I mean, obviously it varies, but most will kind of deal with these three. Now, if you think about food allergies, right? So it can be any, not even just food allergies. It could be medication allergies. It could be seasonal, environmental, dust, you know, all of that. A lot of that, my son included, his asthma flares if he becomes exposed to something that he's allergic to.
Oh, okay.
Right. Because it's, you know, in his lungs and all that. So they are hand in hand. Like I said, they can grow out of one, and then it could flare, you know, if things are going on, but it's really kind of across all of that. And we wanted to make sure that we weren't forgetting any of those. You know, that's why we say allergies, all allergies, asthma, and then the food intolerance.
Okay. Because that was actually my next question, is about, you know, what allergies are included. Now, you just mentioned food intolerance. Is there a difference between an allergic reaction or allergies versus intolerance? Are they the same thing? Are there differences? What are those differences?
Yeah. So with the food intolerance, you could think of that in the simplest example to understand is you might have someone that you know that maybe gets a stomach ache after they drink milk, and they are lactose intolerant, right? That's one of the most common. And they can take something for that, or they just avoid that. That's not going to send them into anaphylaxis. That is an intolerance that their body can't tolerate. For a food allergy or a medication allergy, or because medication can also cause that. I mean, even bee stings, right? There are so many different things that your body is allergic to. It you know, anaphylaxis kind of starts where your body's like, hey, what is that? I don't like that. And they kick it back, and it becomes an allergic reaction. And that could lead to anaphylaxis. And the only thing that can stop an allergic reaction is epinephrine. That is the only thing.
Now, do the schools or does your organization have like trainings on using the EpiPens? Because that seems to be the most common treatment for immediate allergic reactions.
Yeah. So a few years ago, and it was about when my son was in third grade. We were big advocates on he needs to be an advocate for himself, right? He needs to start to carry his EpiPen at school. He needs to have that in the classroom, not in the nurse's office. Seconds count, right? So,
Absolutely.
sending someone to run for an EpiPen in the nurse's office in a school the size of his school was, to me, I mean, I couldn't imagine it. He needed to have that in. Yeah, it's too long. Get the nurse. Where is she? Like, he needed to have that. So, they didn't stock the pens throughout the building. There was just in the nurse's office and locked in a cabinet, right? Because they don't want kids going in and grabbing them. Right. So, around that time, I had again gone to the school committee, and I'm like, can we stock Epi? Can we have that in the cafeteria? Can we have it in the furthest place from the nurse's office in the school in a cabinet, so that the EpiPens are there? And in Peabody, they did it. They actually said, yeah, we need to do that. We will support that. And they purchased the cabinets, and they put them up. And that was just in Peabody. Other towns and districts have done that and have put that in there. But yeah, part of the problem right now in Massachusetts is we're one of very few that have pushed through a lot of laws around food allergies and allergies in general, and the stock Epi. So it's just, that's really on our target next, is to push those along and make sure that we're falling in line, and we're, getting the support from the laws being in place, because then that trickles down. It's harder to go up if you don't have that from the top.
Right. Okay. Now with EpiPens, I've listening to you just kind of triggered this in my brain. I know you need a prescription for them. But are there different doses or different strengths, or is it just like one EpiPen for any anaphylactic shock type thing?
Yeah, great question. They do have a child version, which is 0.3, and then they have the adult version, which is 0.5. So, as when they're little, they don't need as much. So if you go suspect an allergic reaction, you should use your EpiPen immediately. I mean, that is the line of defense. When you use that, it, hopefully will stop the allergic reaction in its tracks. And then you need to go to the hospital and be monitored, because it's epinephrine. So it definitely sends your heart, racing, and it's kind of like stepping up your body. So you want to make sure that you're giving the right dosage. You don't want to give necessarily a child an adult dose. There are different types of EpiPens. So a couple of years ago, you may remember or have seen on the news where the prices of EpiPens skyrocketed.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you wanted me to talk about that, but yeah.
I mean, we can. I don't know if I can say my true feelings on air, but
just keep it clean. This is a family show,
Yeah. It was difficult. I actually had met with the Mylan company at the time, and they wanted to talk to me about what I thought. And I'm like, what do I think?
Do you really want to know?
Right. Like you're price gouging. And that's essentially what it was, because epinephrine's been around forever. The EpiPen has never changed shape. It's been the EpiPen forever. I mean, for 100 years. And they knew they had the market cornered. There wasn't really any competition, so they could do it. And with Epis, it's with the schools, they require a new epinephrine pen every year.
Okay.
So your hope is it's 1 year. So obviously your hope is you get to throw that pen out after a year, right? But some people were paying $750 for that pen,
and they're not going to throw it away.
Well, and now the research is showing that the epinephrine lasts a lot longer than that, and they're trying to kind of push through that. Well, in the last few years, once all that happened, more companies came out on the market, and AVQ came out with a talking EpiPen, which is really cool, and it looks like almost like wallet size, the size of a deck of cards, and it's great for a male or someone that doesn't carry a bag or something that can stick it in their pocket. My son definitely loves that. It's less obtrusive and large. in size, but they're expensive, and not all insurance can cover them. So there's still some work there, but we do have generic options. I mean,
Okay.
I was one of the ones paying the $750. I just actually renewed a prescription. I paid $50. So I was like, whoa, that's, that's a deal. It's a bargain.
Oh, still got to be
But you need
painful.
it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But,
You hope you throw it away. I mean, that means you didn't have an allergic reaction. So, or you had one and you
but
didn't use it, which you should never.
$750, it must be painful.
Painful. Definitely painful. Yeah. But there's no way around it. I mean, it's your lifeline.
Now, you had said, during our conversation, you've worked a lot with the schools, and you also mentioned the bakery. Are there other organizations that you've worked with, like Scouts or like the YMCA or the library, or have you partnered with anybody to help further your mission along, other than this, in addition to the schools?
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, we realized that, and I had a friend. I met another advocate from New York, and her son unfortunately passed away at the age of 15 to an allergic reaction. And she has become such an amazing advocate, as a result of that. And in New York, she actually advocated to have Epipens, installed or with police and fire. It was important, they're the first line of defense, not necessarily the ambulance. If you call 911, it may not be the ambulance that arrives first. Oftentimes it's a police officer or even the fire truck. And they can't help. They in seconds count. In talking to a lot of these, law enforcement and first responders, they said, I wish I had that, because, there's times that people will even pull into the fire station with somebody that's having an allergic reaction and say, help me. And they don't have that on them unless they have a medical truck or something like that. And that's not in every town. So I was like, okay, we would love to do that. We would love to help you put those on fire trucks and police cars. What do we do? How do we start that up? And Senator Walsh, who represents Peabody, I met with him and have become, friendly with him over the years. And he was like, yeah, I want to help. I think this is amazing. And we got it done. I mean, it was a very short turnaround time. We ended up paying for them the first year. We actually got a grant from AVQ to put the AVQ injectors on all of the fire trucks. And then we paid for them the year after that to sustain the program. This was about 3 years ago. And then last year, they were working it into the budget and really trying to take that on. And there's been a new chief, and we put them on the fire trucks, and he's a big advocate for it and a big believer in keeping those there. Yeah, he wants to keep that going, and we do too. So we're hoping that we can continue to help. COVID, like Michael said, has kind of thrown things off a little bit with everybody's budgets and such, but it's still definitely something important. And I think that was a big win for us. That was something that other towns hadn't done. But as I saw my friend in New York and the success there, it was important to be able to have that extra line of help in a time when seconds literally count.
Now, are you hoping to expand it to either other towns, or you had mentioned the fire trucks? What about the police cruisers or any of that? Are those in the works?
Yeah, I would love to see them on school resource officers, what those that are in the schools, because if there's an emergency in a school, they're running for that emergency quicker than anybody. So, in talking, that's definitely, they're open to that. And police officers are as well. We have a really good relationship, especially in Peabody, with all law enforcement. And, they come to our events, they support a lot of it. So I would love to do that in the future. Honestly, it's just expensive until we can figure out a way to get around the pricing, and how we can do that. And I'm kind of trying to work with some of the Epipen companies to provide a grant or provide some free medication to them. And honestly, I think a lot of that will happen with some laws too, because if we could get a law in place and start that process of let's have all law enforcement carry them, or let's have fire, then that becomes a lot easier for advocates to be able to carry that on in their town.
Oh, cool. And it must be also hard to track because, like you said, it has an expiration date, and if every truck and every police cruiser and, you know, the school resource officers making sure they're always up to date, because eventually, you know, if they do need to be used, you want to make sure that it's still potent enough to help.
Yeah. Yeah. And we had to follow the expiration dates, right? In any schools
Right.
or with lawn, they have to follow that because they have, this is a prescription.
So looking on your website, which is a really cool website, by the way, I loved
Thank
all the
you.
stuff. You have other initiatives that you've been working on, like can you tell me more about the Sticky Project?
Oh my God, I love that project. So we've tried a lot of
Is
different
it
things.
still ongoing, or is it like just one and
No,
done?
it was kind of one of those that went on for a little while, and you know, we asked people to write on sticky notes of people or kids or family that suffered from food allergies, and to kind of send us the sticky notes. And we had intended to kind of put those up somewhere, and we got a lot of sticky notes, and we had the boards. We brought them to events, you know, and it was a great little project. But we try a lot of things, and they don't always go the way that we hope, but most of them do. But that was a fun one. That was good. I don't know how long ago, Michael. That was quite a few years ago.
Maybe back.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time laminating those sticky notes and putting them on boards and pulling them over to events. But you know, it
I would have
definitely
just used
got
the staple
people
gun,
talking.
you know. Forget about laminating.
No, I glued them all. I know I took the long way.
Wow.
But yeah, the Cookies for a Cause was what I talked about. That was the selling those cookies. We tried the Sticky Project, and then we tried the Aware 50 campaign, and that was,
what's that?
we were hoping coast to coast. Like we wanted, you know, California to Boston. Who's suffering? Show from allergies or asthma. Show your sign, you know, and put where you're from. And we got quite a few of those. It was awesome. It didn't
try to get like all
necessarily
50 states or something, or
yeah, we wanted to, but it never really took off like we had hoped. It was a good attempt, and I don't know, maybe we could have carried that on a little longer.
You know, the Facebook thing, please share. A student of mine is working on this project, fill out the survey, you know.
That's what we should have done right at the time. I see a lot of responses to those.
I never know if those are valid or not, or if
I don't either, but I do them because I feel bad for the student. Maybe we'll resurrect that and we'll say it's my son's idea or something. But you know, I feel like all of those things are even if they don't go as large, you know, because like I said, I everything I do, I have grand visions.
Go big or go home, you know.
Yeah,
Okay,
and sometimes it's just small, but it's something that people are talking about. Like, oh, you're gonna send my sticky notes in. What are you talking about? Oh, it's for, you know, allergy awareness. I know this person, and there's a conversation about it. You know, we also tried to do kind of you know, pass the epi, right? So I train you on an Epipen and how to inject it, and then you take it, and then you train somebody else, and go you know, it keeps going. So
but you need like the training Epipens though for that.
Yeah, the trainers.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And at one of our benefits, I think it was the second or third, we had a trainer at everyone's place setting, and at one point in the night, we had a demonstration of that. We had everybody stand up, and they injected the person next to them with the trainer. Okay. And it was amazing. I mean, when I tell you I had chills looking around the room at everybody training each other. Wow. And how many people asked if they could bring them home and be able to train their children. And
can you get those training Epipens? Because that would be really cool.
Yeah. I had reached out to Milan at the time, and also reached out to Aviku because it was fairly new, and they both sent me thousands of trainers. I mean, we had so many. Wow. I still have like a lot left of trainers that they had sent us, and it was just awesome. I mean, that's one of my favorite memories. You could hear the clicks, like it was like all around the room, and everybody was training each other. And I think that was the one we had like 400 people at one of our events.
Oh, wow.
It was awesome.
Now, speaking of Epipens, again, I'm going off script. I had taken first aid training in the past. And at one point, one of the trainings, I mean, we could be going back 15, 20 years at this point, where no one else is, you know, just as like a first aider, you're not allowed to use an Epipen on someone else unless you have their permission. So they're like, grab their hand, and can you administer an EpiPen on someone else if they're like in anaphylactic shock? Or is there
Yeah.
like a law against that? Do you know?
It's kind of one of those gray areas, right, Michael? Like, I mean, we get that question a lot. In the schools, in this in the schools, if
Okay.
let's say my son has his EpiPen on him and another child suddenly goes into anaphylaxis, maybe they have an unknown an unknown allergy, maybe
Okay.
they have an allergy but they don't have an EpiPen. Technically, that EpiPen that is my son's shouldn't be used on someone else. It's not their prescription. It'd be like giving somebody else someone's medicine.
Right. Okay. I get that.
But you know, as we're raising awareness and realizing that, you know, people may have an allergic reaction and not know. Maybe they get stung by a bee for the first time. Maybe they try a new food that they had never tried before and they're out at a restaurant. That, you know, the only way to stop that is epinephrine. So it's not, it's that you just need to give it. I mean, you know, it's, what do they call it? The like the, Michael, what's the
Samaritan
thing where
Award, the Samaritan,
yes, right,
Samaritan
exactly.
law
I
or
mean,
something.
you're saving somebody's life.
Right.
Yes. Yes. So I guess there's still some technicalities around it. However, I think with some of the laws that need to be pushed forward, that will start to smooth that out, and make less fear around that. And I've talked to a lot of people that are like, I don't care if your son is in a classroom and or out somewhere and he has his EpiPen on, someone else goes into anaphylaxis, I'm using it. You know, I'm going to save their life. I'm going to do it. You know, and hopefully everything goes well and
Right.
you know, I
But I'm
won't
also
hesitate.
thinking, like, if your son's out at a restaurant and he's, you know, he's allergic to the tree nuts, and the menu says that they're, you know, nut free, and something got cross contaminated in the kitchen, and you know he is unable to grab his EpiPen, could someone else take his EpiPen and help him out? I think that's
Yes.
kind of what I'm thinking of.
Yep. And I wouldn't want anybody to hesitate doing that.
Okay.
Please help them. You know, it's please, because if you're in full anaphylaxis, you may not be able to do that for yourself. You may not be able to breathe. You may be losing consciousness. You might not understand what's happening because you've got a lot of things going on and you need somebody to help you.
So, you know, you've been mentioning the schools. Is it elementary through high school, or is it just the high school because your son's there, or how does that work? You know, how are you targeting the schools?
So we did most
I know
of
you
our
talked
work
about
in,
this already, but you know, just
yeah, no, it's a good question. We did most of it at the elementary level because I think that's when it's newer. That's when kids are kind of learning. They're more open to wanting to protect their classmates and really kind of teaching them young, right?
Okay.
That these, you know, their friend may have an allergy. I know from my experience, and Michael, I'll pass it to you because you have a daughter. It's a little bit different, but my son is extremely embarrassed about his food allergies and his asthma. He doesn't want anyone to know. He doesn't want them to know that he's carrying an EpiPen. He doesn't want to be different or have anybody to pay that much attention to him if something was going on. So I tried very lightly now. You know, it's got to be subtle. It's got to be kind of on his terms a little bit, just because I know how sensitive it is for him. His friends all know and all those things. But we've laid the groundwork. You know, I everybody knows who he is, and even in elementary school with HIPAA and everything, like, oh, we can't let anybody in the school know that he has allergies. I'm like, listen, I'm giving you permission. I don't care if you put a poster up in the office that says that he has food allergies to these things. I want everybody to know that, so that if he starts coughing in the lunchroom, everyone knows Michael has food allergies, you know? So there's definitely a different dynamic at that age. And Michael, I'll let you talk because you also have a daughter, and that's a little different, and she's younger.
Yeah, so she's 9, and you know, as fate would have, it, the past year or so, year and a half almost, there's been such either no school or such separation in school.
Right.
And in some respects, this is how we've always wanted things, where at lunchtime, everybody sits in their own circle, and literally now that's happening.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a bittersweet thing that's going on.
Right.
right now at lunchtime in her school, everybody's separated. And if they're outside, they're literally sitting in their own circle, 6 feet apart from somebody else. That's like an allergy parent's dream come true. Fortunately, it came on the heels of something a lot bigger and badder.
Right.
So it's been, she kind of went from, a 6 or 7 year old that wasn't really paying a lot of attention about this to like now a 9-year-old that she skipped a lot of that time period in school where you're sort of worrying about what other kids think, and even till today that's really not an issue because of the all the separation that's happening. But she's I think she's out in front of it. I mean, she carries her own EpiPen in her bag. The teacher has one in the class. I wouldn't say she tries to hide it, and I don't think she tries to let everybody know about it. She just knows that this is her deal.
Right. Okay.
And she did a very good job not touching or eating things that she shouldn't. I mean, it's like Kristie said, that's just embedded into their minds now. But, we have been fortunate with the way the new normal is, and I don't know how long that's going to last, but when there's, and again, hopefully it goes away in some respects, but
right.
Hopefully some of this stays with us during some of this, because it's made things a little bit easier on us just day to day. But I can see like her and Michael being 15, not wanting this to be a thing, and not wanting to carry the EpiPen. And I see that because my son also is 15, same age as her son, Michael also. And he sort of doesn't want anybody being put out because of what his deal is. It's different. He doesn't have a food allergy. He doesn't have to carry an EpiPen, but he's got celiac. He doesn't want anybody making special provisions for him. He doesn't want us calling parents' house saying he just wants to do his own thing. And he's been doing awesome. He's been doing really, really good. I think he's got a pretty good circle of friends around him. These are some pretty good kids that they understand. And, again, he's still 15. He's really not doing a ton of stuff on his own.
Okay.
They're starting to here and there go out a little bit, but he does great. He advocates for himself. And, I think I think he's surrounded by some pretty good kids that make it easy. But it's they both do pretty well with it. Like I said, 30 years ago, it wasn't a topic. You just didn't do things. But nowadays we're fortunate in a way because there's a lot of accommodations that are happening. There's a lot of, everywhere you turn, there's an accommodation for a lot of things, not just food allergies, but for a lot of things.
Right.
And that happens to be one that's getting a lot of attention right now for the past several years. And, but they do good. It's a daily chore that we have to deal with at some level, but it's, the past year, I got to say, it's made it a little bit easier. Restaurants being closed down, that's been kind of great. A lot of the daily stresses that we used to have with this have just gone away. I think Kristie had said it like a year ago, it would be great if we could just keep these kids in a bubble. And that's been what's been happening for the past year. So again, bittersweet, this is not the way we want things to be, and nobody wants life to be like this, but there's been some hidden advantages here for families that have been dealing with things like this for a little while now.
Now, just from like a developmental perspective, when you first realized that your children had these food allergies, how do you teach them to advocate for themselves? How do you teach them to, ask, does this have nuts, or does this have, whatever allergen there is? Because, when my kids were like little, I could tell them anything and they just did their own thing. And in your case, it could be life-threatening. So how do you get them to start that advocating for themselves?
Yeah. So my story of my son started so young. So, we actually just retested him for his allergies and his blood work, and I was hoping that he grew out of them, and he didn't. And hadn't been a while. And I told him, like, I kind of broke the news to him, and he was like, okay, he doesn't know any different. He was 2.5. So at the time, it was like, okay, we have to watch everything that he eats. Let's get rid of anything in the house that has any of his allergens. Family needed to do the same. We just got rid of it all. He didn't, I don't ever remember him realizing any of that. Funny story is that we were constantly on top of it, that I will never forget. He was, 3, it was a couple of months after, and handed him his socks to put on. I'm like, put your socks on. And he's like, will these give me nut eye? Because his allergies always, his reactions always started in his eye. And he's like, will they give me nut eye? And I was like, no, they're your socks, and he was just attributing anything to an allergic reaction. So I was like, oh, so he's paying attention. And, it was a learning moment, and we talked about it. It wasn't food and all those things. But I remind him of that now. And it's funny now. But at the time I was like, oh, my God, my baby thinks the socks are going to, put him into an allergic reaction. It's hard. And then it's just our life now. It is just, it's our lifestyle. I'm not sure how we would process if his allergies were gone. How life would be. It would be totally different for us. I would love that. That's my dream. But it's just been teaching him to advocate, having him train others, having him train his friends, telling him he needs to kind of talk about it. And like Michael said, Michael also has a great group of friends where if Michael's embarrassed to go out and carry the Epipen, his friends are like, I'll just carry it. I want to be able to help him. They're so amazing about it. And, now he's a teenager, and now I have to talk to him about girlfriends, and, his girlfriend will need to avoid allergens for a lot of reasons too. And, all of that stuff, that's not stuff that people think about. So like I said, the worries change. So Michael is kind of unique because your daughter became allergic later after she'd already had a lot of foods. So that's a little bit of a different story. Michael.
My daughter?
Yeah, Olivia was a little older. She wasn't 3.
She was probably 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was about 4 or 5 years old with her. And again, as fate would have it, what it turned out she was allergic to, I also was allergic to. So we had just by default been avoiding that stuff forever, anyways.
Okay.
He had I think one of those granola bars at a checkout line, just a quick snack. No obvious signs that it had nuts in it. Okay. It wasn't like a pack of peanuts. It was just something that contained a nut. That looking, now that we know to stay away from that stuff. But we had always just not had that stuff anyways. And then she had it and discovered it, obviously, the hard way that she had it. But it was sort of on our horizon anyways, because I couldn't have fish and I couldn't have nuts. So we just didn't have fish and nuts in the house. Or if we did, I don't even think we did actually. So it was sort of a thing that just wasn't allowed yet. It was just, that's the way we did it. We don't have nuts in our house. We don't have fish in our house, and a couple of other small things. And then, and now we really, after her diagnosis, now we really didn't have that stuff. And, we made sure that it was, not in houses that she was going to, just hyper vigilant all of a sudden, where I was very lax about it. And I'm probably not a good candidate to speak to about advocating, because I never did. If I ate something I shouldn't have as a child, I would take Benadryl and go to bed. And you look back on that, you're like, how was that the way? But that was the way.
But that was, exactly.
And, so it was something that was, again, sort of it was something that wasn't in our daily life, but if we brushed up against it, it wasn't really a giant deal. I just stayed away. But then after she developed the same allergies, then everything changed. Okay. But she was, I think, still young enough where it was easy. It wasn't like a difficult thing. I shared the same thing with her. Probably made it a little bit easier for her. We both have to do this thing, but our house is completely free of allergens for anything my kids are allergic to. So we don't have fish, we don't have nuts, we don't have gluten. When I'm out and about, or my wife's out and about, We don't have it ever. We don't ever bring it in. So we live the same life that they live.
Okay.
And it's just made things a lot easier. Like to your point, your question earlier about how do they advocate for themselves. And a big part of this is we just don't. We don't go a lot of places that we have to sort through things because it's too complicated.
Okay.
And then you're at the mercy of the person behind the counter that day or the person helping you out. And they could be doing as good as they can be doing, but it's just, there's a handful of places we're comfortable at.
Okay.
I'm talking about like eating out at restaurants.
Yeah, exactly.
And then there's just a whole bunch of things that we avoid because it just doesn't, it doesn't add up to take the chances, carnivals and movie theaters and sporting events when it's just too hectic, too chaotic. You can't really get good information. So we just avoid it. And I think that's probably the biggest way that they advocate for themselves is they just don't get into situations that we don't really have some control over. And you never have full control when you're out of your house.
Right.
There's all
that's kind of what I was looking at.
right.
Yep. And we give big shouts out to allergy friendly restaurants. I don't know that they can actually, and they probably do, most of them have kids or families that suffer, but it's like finding a gem, and there are a lot of them around now, and it's just amazing to bring your child and let them pick anything they want. So awesome.
Well, we only have a couple of minutes left, so I definitely want to talk about, you mentioned some of the past events that you've done, the past initiatives. Do you have anything coming up in the pipeline? I know we're in the middle of a global pandemic, so it's kind of hard to determine that, but how would someone go about supporting AAAI?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So we have a website, wickedaware.com. A couple years ago, we actually trademarked the phrase "I'm wicked aware." We're from Boston. We want to go big, right? So we want this to branch out across the country, and so we carried that over to our website. So we have that option there. We are planning. 2022 is probably going to be our year that we can actually get back to some big events. We are hoping to kick off some support groups. So I definitely want to, put that out there and start to get some interest there. And that's really, I think the next thing is laws, going up to the local level and just seeing what we can push through from a legislative avenue and get those in place. That is a big goal of mine, especially for this year where we're kind of waiting to be able to do some more things and bring people together. Because our events raise money, but they raise so much awareness, because the people that come to a lot of our events, 300 and 400 people, most of them don't have allergies or asthma.
Right.
They come to support us, and that's really where we can kind of tell people about our mission and some things to keep their eye on and teach and educate. So this is great. Thank you. I think we need a sequel.
Absolutely.
We could talk for another 5 hours, I think. I know I could, right, Michael? I usually can't stop talking about it, but.
Well, actually, you brought us to a wonderful end, because we are actually out of time right now. So definitely, Kristie, thank you, Michael, for taking time out of your crazy schedules to come and join me for our conversation. I've really enjoyed it. You are working on your mission because you have raised awareness. And I want to thank you for all of the hard work that you're doing for all of our kids. So thank you so much. And I also want to thank everyone at home for tuning in this evening. I hope you're motivated to, help raise awareness as well. So anyway, thank you very much, and I'll see you around town. Good night.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, Linda.